Hello, class. This is Dr. Scott with Business Math 1, Week 1. There were just a couple of things I wanted to review with you. One is rounding whole numbers, and the other is dissecting word problems. So I still want you to read your book, read your chapter 1. When you're reading any college text, especially a math text, I don't want you to get too hung up on whether or not you understand what you're reading exactly when you're reading it. I just want you to expose your brain to the information. Then, look at the lecture slides. Those will point out some of the more basic key concepts that you should be getting from the chapter. And that things should start to make a little bit more sense then. They may not be crystal clear, and that's okay. But at that point, you should be getting to the point where you can actually ask some questions. And then you can go back to your book or ask me. Whatever you need to do is fine. But I want to let you know the only way to learn math is to do math. I don't want you to worry about making mistakes. I do want you to show your work, because if you don't show your work, I don't know where you went wrong, and it's going to be harder for me to teach you what to do right. Anyways, neither here nor there. Today we're going to talk about rounding whole numbers. We'll get into rounding decimals later, but today we'll talk about rounding whole numbers, and we'll talk about dissecting word problems. So you notice I have a few things ready here for you. And I'm working in really big numbers here. And we can change these and work in smaller numbers, but you're going to see that the principles are the same. Now, one of the main things to do is to read the instructions to your problem, because this is going to be important. If we're rounding a number, we need to know what to round it to. So for instance, if we are rounding to the nearest 100 million, that is very different than rounding to the nearest 100. Because the ones here, are in the 100 million place, and the sixes here are in the hundreds place. So depending on what we're rounding, that would be very different. So if we're rounding to the nearest 100 million, we're just trying to figure out whether we're changing the 1 from a 1 to a 2, or maybe from a 2, just from a 1 to a 2. We're rounding up here. So we look at the 1, and then we look at the 9. That's the second place. And we ask ourselves, is 9 greater than or equal to 5? Yes, it is greater than 5. We're not going to worry about the third place, because right now we're just dealing with 100 millions. So the 9 is greater than 5, so we know that we can round up to 200 million. Now, we have 149,032,673. And if we're rounding to the nearest 100 million, we're still looking at our 1. Then we're looking at the second place, a 4. Now, is 4 greater than or equal to 5? It is not. And again, we're not looking at the third place, because right now we're just concentrating on 100 million. We're rounding to the closest 100 million. So we are not rounding up the 1. So 149,032,673 rounded to the closest 100,000 is 100,000. Now, we do the same thing with 159,032,673. We're looking at the 1 because it's in the 100 million place, and we need to know whether or not we're changing it to a 2. So the second place is a 5. Is 5 greater than or equal to 5? Yes, it is. 5 is equal to 5. So we round up to the greatest, or to the nearest 100 million, to 200,000, or 200 million. Sorry about that. So I want to leave that there for just a second, and now let's figure out some smaller numbers. Okay. Now let's round these all the way. And when I say round all the way, I mean round it up to the largest number that it can be. So we are still looking at the hundreds place, because I've given hundreds here the entire time. So then we're looking now at 596 to see if the 5 can be rounded up to a 6. So then we look at the second place. Is 9 more than 5? Yes, it is. And we don't have to go any farther because we know we've already been able to change the 5 to the 6, and going any farther is not going to give us a different number. So rounded all the way is 600. So now we look at 201, and we're looking to see if we can change the 2 to a 3. So we look, is 0 greater than or equal to 5? No. But we're rounding all the way, so we still need to look to see if we can change the 0 to a 1. And so we look to the number that's immediately to its right in the third place. Is 1 greater than or equal to 5? No. So the rounded number, which should come as no surprise to anyone, is 200. We do the same thing for 982. We look at the 9 to see if it can become a 10, which I know puts us into the thousands. That's okay. So we look at 9, and now we're looking at the number immediately to its right, which is an 8. Is 8 greater than or equal to 5? Yes. That means we round the 9 to a 10. I know that some of us have heard this referred to as 1000. We're going to put our decimal there, and we have 1000. And just to be clear, 1000 is 10 hundredths. So if you have questions about rounding, let me know. Read your book, read the slides, call me, email me, text me. I'll be happy to help you. Watch this as many times as you need to as well. Now, the word problems. I know that when people talk about, two trains leaving the station at the same time, one's going backwards at 80 miles an hour and the other one's going forward at 60, people start to cringe. they're not that crazy. Sometimes we just need to figure out what's important and what's not. So this word problem I took directly from slide 10 of your lecture slides. And let's look at it and figure out what's important, what the facts are, what we need to solve for, what the steps are in solving, and what the key points are. And we can even just get rid of the things that aren't important. For instance, it does not matter that, well, actually, I'm going to, instead of just getting rid of this, I'm going to copy it. Okay, so now let's just get rid of the things that are not important. Tootsie Roll Industries is not important to solving the problem. So $194 million So sales reached $194 million and a record profit of $22,556,000. $22,556,000. Oops, sorry about that. And we are rounding all the way. And once again, Tootsie Rolls industry sales reached $194 million and a record profit of $22,556,000. Round the sales and profit figures all the way. We know that it doesn't matter that it's Tootsie Roll industry, so that doesn't have any part in it. We know that 194 million is important. We know that 22,550,000 is important. And we know that we need to round the sales and profit figures all the way. So round all the way, round all the way. Steps are the same. So we're looking at the 1 and the 9 to see if the 9 can make the 1 a 2. And 9 is greater than or equal to 5. It is greater than. Yes, so we don't have to do anything else. Doing the steps up in our other little grid. So now we do the same thing. Can we turn the 2 into a 3? Well, let's see. The number directly to its right is not greater than or equal to 5. So that is a no. So based on what we are trying to do here, it's a little bit different. And I would, if I were to get this problem from you, I would accept it either way, just because the instructions say to round it all the way, but the example in the lecture does not have us rounding it all the way. If we're rounding all the way, we're also going the next step and looking at the third place. Is the third place greater than or equal to 5? Yes, 5 is equal to 5. So we would take that as a yes. And then if we're rounding all the way, our number becomes 23 million. But what the example is asking us to do is not to round all the way, but to round all the way to the left. So if we're rounding all the way to the left, we're really only rounding to the nearest